everyone, Sean here from Somm Wine Club, and I have got some wine for you. This is the 2019 Wynns Coonawarra Estate Black Label Cabernet Sauvignon. This is coming from Coonawarra in the southeast corner of South Australia in Australia, and part of the December 2024 Somm Wine Club box. I love this wine. I have, in my career, only had a handful of wines that in blind tastings I'm readily able to recognize a specific cuvee, a specific producer, a specific wine, and be like, that's that wine. I taste it, I recognize it almost instantaneously when I smell it. I'm like, this wine just has such a profound olfactory impact and memory state that it's almost impossible for you to miss it. And there's a couple of reasons why that is. So, Wynns Coonawarra Estate, being in Coonawarra, is one of the benchmarks of Australian Cabernet Sauvignon. It's been produced since 1954, this label, and the winery itself, vineyards were planted in 1891, and the winery itself, this very distinctive three-gabled farmhouse winery building, was constructed in 1896. I visited when I was living in Australia in 2013, even when I was still just kind of getting into wine. I mean, I was in, but I wasn't like as maybe obsessed as I am now, even though I did fly across the world to just go and visit wineries. This was one of the places I was like, have to go to Coonawarra, have to go visit Wynns. Really important for me to kind of see this place and understand why this is so distinctive. So Coonawarra is a very narrow strip of land. It's 16 kilometers long. It's 2 kilometers wide. There's 25 wineries that are basically on one road that runs north-south through Coonawarra. It's the easiest wine region in the world to actually go and do winery tours because it's like one road. But there's not much else there. There's a gas station. There was a rugby pitch, or AFL pitch, I guess. And that's about it. And it's in the middle of nowhere. It's really difficult to, unless you're going there for that particular purpose, there's no real reason to be in Coonawarra. But what makes it distinctive is not its isolation, its size, it's the soil. So the reason that the region is only 16 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide is because of the soil. So there is a very unique soil type in this area called Terra Rosa, red earth. It is a iron oxide rich clay silt on top of a limestone bedrock. Very poor soil, great for vineyards, very well drained, but limestone has great water holding capacity. So in this incredibly arid, dry part of South Australia where there's very little rainfall during the growing season, the limestone has great water holding capacity. So the vineyards, even though they are planted in this very dry climate, can go down into the stone and get some moisture out of the soil. So that's the soil type. That's great for Cabernet. Cabernet loves that poor soil that's kind of got that limestone underneath, and that makes this area very distinctive from a soil and climate style. But then there's the wines. There's something about Coonawarra Cab. It always comes across with this minty eucalyptus, menthol-y kind of subtle green character. It's not the bell pepper and jalapeno that you get from other Cabernet, or even that kind of like green pine resinous herbs that you can get in Cabernet as well. This is definitely eucalyptus. It's mint. It's almost like, think pepper and patty. Think that like chocolate covered minty cream. That's sometimes what Coonawarra Cab smells like. So there's all of these very distinctive characteristics. The soil, the climate, the size of the region, the history of the producers, the small kind of compact area that they all exist in, the history, and their iconic production. So this is 100% Cab. It's grown. They take the best 20% or 25% of the fruit that they get from their estate vineyards, and that goes into Black Label. It's done in a mixture of barriques, French hogsheads and vats, oak vats. About 30% of which of those is new. So there is some oak influence here, but it is really well integrated and really balanced with all of the other components here. This intense dark fruit, you get a ton of black currant and black cherry. There's that vanilla, there's that eucalyptus, that menthol. Violets, dusty earth, dusty rose petals. And this wine continues to evolve in the glass as well. When I first opened it up, the oak was very prominent, it was very forward, and now that's kind of fading a little bit, and you're getting a little bit more of the floral notes and the darker fruit. This is a very, seems like a weird compliment, very drinkable Cabernet Sauvignon, because even though it is robust, lots of intensity, lots of fruit, I can feel the warmth. The oak is present. It doesn't, it's not angry. It's not like fighting back so much. You take a sip, you're like, oh, oh, oh. And it's like this wave of flavor that kind of washes over your palate and changes with each kind of breath that you take. And then all of those components, the acid, the tannin, the alcohol, are noticeable, but they're not overwhelming in any one direction. They're very, very balanced. Balance is, I've talked about that so much, that that's the really the key focus of many, and I think should be all great winemakers. They're seeking this integration, this balance of flavor, of intensity, of structure, of longevity. This does that so well. Um, and that's another reason why it is often unmistakable in a blind tasting. You're like, oh, that's, I know what that is. Medium plus acid, medium plus tannins, very powdery, soft, silky tannins, but with some heft to them. And then that very distinctive, subtle, minty green thing on the finish, which, like I said, sets this wine apart, gives it its distinctive character, and also can influence some of your food and wine pairings too. This wine has a lot of flavor, so it needs equally flavorful food. So you have to think game, think lamb. Lamb is like very intense flavor in the meat, and that's an iconic opportunity to pair with a very flavorful cab. So doing like classic crust with mustard and breadcrumbs and tarragon, you get that crunch, you get that little bit of green, you get that um, acidity and bite of the mustard. You can do Café de Paris, do like entrecôte de Café de Paris, which is a weirdly Swiss, even though it sounds like it's going to be French, dish of basically filet done with a butter made with shallots and lots of herbs, and it gives you that little bit of herbaceousness and that fat and that extra saltiness and that density, that richness, that little bit of smoky onion. There's a lot that you can play with there. You can also just be experimental with it. You can, they on their website they talk about doing this with like a marinated salmon, which I would never think about, but they said that they've tried it and they said that it worked. So I was like, okay, I trust you. I wouldn't think they were going to put something on their website that they don't believe in, but that's a little bit of a weird one for me. But hey, go try it and you tell me what you think. There's a lot to love in this wine. It's an icon that I think everyone should at least have tried once in their life. Very collectible, very distinguished and a consistent top-ranking Cabernet from Australia that like really stands out if put into a global lineup of Cabernet Sauvignon. So I hope that you enjoy the Wynns. I know that I always do. I'm glad to be able to share it with everybody, and we'll see everybody next time. Thanks.